What happens to us after we die? Do we cease to exist, or do we live on? This may be the biggest question that mankind has ever asked, as well as what this podcast is about. In this show, we will examine past life memories, speak with professional hypnotherapists, astral projection practitioners, psychics, and much more, all in an attempt to decipher this riddle. So welcome to the puzzle. Welcome to the regression session. Welcome back to the regression session. My name is Ian, and this week we're going to be hearing from Andy Sway. Andy is a QHHT practitioner, which stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. If you don't know what that is, check out the link in the description. Andy actually learned QHHT from Dolores Cannon, who I've actually mentioned several times on this show before. So he learned it directly from the source, which is awesome. If you don't know anything about Dolores Cannon, definitely check her out. She has some very interesting work. I would also like to apologize for the lack of additional content on my Facebook and my Twitter. I'm just kind of gearing up for my baby that's going to be born here literally as of today's recording in like 4 days. So I'm nervous, I'm excited, and all that stuff. But feel free to head on over to my Facebook or my Twitter. Shout out to me, let me know you've been listening. I would really appreciate that. There's going to be links to those in the description. And here is my conversation with Andy Sway. Hey Andy, thanks for coming on to the show.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. And like I was saying, if you don't mind, just for some context, telling us a little bit about your background, whatever you're comfortable sharing as far as like where your beliefs started, how they led to the point where you are now practicing QHHT, just for some context.
Sure. So I remember actually debating the topic of reincarnation in class when I was in fourth grade. And so I always tended to believe in reincarnation in past lives. And I was always interested in all kinds of spiritual stuff from a very early age. But I was also really interested in getting out of my hometown, Bakersfield, California. And I was an exchange student when I was a junior in high school and lived in Sweden for a year. And that really changed my life because not only did I live there and really learn the language fluently but then a friend came over and we traveled around Europe the whole summer. So like I went back home and I had been in like 15 countries and, you know, I'd been everywhere. I'd been all over Western Europe. I'd been to the Acropolis and the Eiffel Tower and the Roman Colosseum and, you know, just like all of it, like red light district in Amsterdam, you know, like all kinds of crazy stuff. And so it's always this search for beyond the normal in my life, whether it's like spiritual search or just travel and different cultures. In astrology, that's like the ninth house. So it's like philosophy, religion, spirituality, foreign cultures. That's been my whole thing. My whole life. And I thought I was going to be a professor of Middle East politics. I was in a PhD program for 6 years studying, political science, international politics. and a friend came, and I didn't even know what she was going to show me, but she said she'd learned some new thing, and I didn't even know what the hell it was. I was pretty checked out, and it ended up being a healing session. And in that healing session, which was not hypnosis at all, but I still regressed to my birth and had a big healing around some issues that were tied into my birth process. And at the end of that session, I said, "Where do you learn how to do this? This is awesome." And she said, "Well, there's a class in 2 weeks." And I was like, "I'm there." And I did that class. It was just like a weekend seminar. And at the end of that weekend, I was like, I am quitting my PhD program, which I had done all the coursework. I had done half of the exams. Like, I was like, whatever, 2/3, 3/4 of the way through. And I'm just like, no, I don't need it. I'm going to be a healer. That's it. Which my wife at the time wasn't necessarily thrilled, but she was very supportive. So luckily. And then I just started a thing of doing healing, and I started doing energy healing for like 10 years and learning different techniques. And then I found Dolores Cannon's books, the Convoluted Universe series, at the bookstore. And, I was like a house husband and, in grad school, and I used to teach English to Japanese executives and others. And so whenever I had some free time, I'd go to the bookstore and I would just like inhale these like spiritual books, and when I found Dolores Cannon and I started reading about alien past lives and Egyptian past lives and all this stuff, I'm like, oh my God, I got to learn this. This is amazing. So I did my first training with her 12 years ago in 2010, and immediately started practicing past life regression.
And so past life regression and QHHT, in my mind, are similar but different. Is that the case?
Well, I mean, past life regression is the bigger term for all the methods, and QHHT is a unique method of past life regression. And to me, all the different methods of any healing thing, not just hypnosis, but all of them, they're kind of shaped by the energy of the founder. There's a certain imprint. And it's interesting because you see people, like if they do a session with somebody trained by Brian Weiss, for example, they'll talk to the masters, right? And they'll talk to the past life, they'll go into the past lives. And then what Dolores Cannon would call the higher self or subconscious, in Brian Weiss's thing, it would be the masters, right? And so there's kind of like a different imprint. And when you do QHHT, you get a lot, your sessions end up being in that kind of Dolores Cannon mold. You get a lot of like really wild stuff, non-physical, non-human, non-earth kind of past lives. You get a lot. Not mainly, most of the lives are on earth and they're like very normal, like a farmer and, like what most people were for most of history.
Yeah. So what's interesting, and I actually had this question. This is pretty much the only question that I've had in the back of my mind, is like what you were just saying. Brian Weiss, if someone was trained by Brian Weiss, they're going to be getting results that are basically fitting in that mold. Same thing with the Newton Institute. Same thing with QHHT practitioners. You're going to be getting similar results to what the founder did, exactly like what you were saying. And so the way that, because I don't know if you remember me telling you this, but I am also a
Yeah.
past life regression practitioner. And
Right.
I don't even call it that anymore. I call it spiritual hypnosis.
Okay.
Um, but I haven't taken any courses from any of those,
Right.
Weiss, Cannon, or the Newton Institute. And I've looked into all of them and I find them all fascinating. But one thing that I've kind of noticed is I'll pick on the Newton Institute first. With the Newton Institute, I personally feel that the way that they structure their questions is very leading almost. It's like, okay, so we're going to go here and then we're going to go here. And now we're going to go talk to the Council of Elders and then we're going to go here. And it's just like super leading. And the people who take these courses, they almost form like a cult around the founder of these techniques. No, this is the best way to do it. And I don't know if I'm just rambling at this point, but my question really to you is like, what are your thoughts about that and sticking to one specific type of past life regression founded by one specific person and it kind of forming almost like a cult mentality around the founder?
Well, yeah, I actually have a video on my YouTube channel called "Don't Deify Dolores Cannon," or something like that, and it's all about because on certain message boards, forums, whatever, it'll be like, "What did Dolores say about that?" It's like Dolores, in their mind, is like source, like the Bible or whatever. So we go to that. And it's like, no, 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 that's not the deal. I knew Dolores, like Dolores was a down to earth person and she was like, I don't have anything special. I just am curious. That's it. I ask a lot of questions, And so the thing is, like, Dolores taught a method that we can all replicate and find our own stuff. Like my sessions are very much like her books, except the only difference is I don't have very many people who I've done like more than 10 sessions. And I don't have people that I've done like a continuous theme of let's go deeper into, let's go back into that life, because I haven't done a book about it. So I haven't done it in that way. But otherwise, all the wild stuff that comes up in these sessions, I can access, through my clients. And so Dolores didn't claim to be anything. She would always start her lectures like, I'm not a psychic, I'm not a channeler, I'm not a blah, 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 I am just a researcher of lost knowledge and I'm a really curious person, whatever. And so, yeah, there is this tendency. And I think what it is it's the basic tendency that people have to turn spirituality into religion. Okay. It's just this thing that people do. They want to, okay, well then if this is true, then does that mean blah, blah, blah? And it becomes this mental game. And the thing is, what I try to do with my clients at all times is take them back to, you are spirit right now. You have full access. And to the degree that you don't, that's just because you have some stuff clogging things up, which we can clear, right? The idea for, I think, with Jesus, with, any spiritual teacher, that's for real, it's like Jesus said something like, you will do greater things than me. Jesus didn't say, build a Vatican in Rome, the same dudes that crucified me, and fill it with golden jewels and wear robes. And like Jesus would have gone berserk on that, in my mind, the Jesus I think I understand.
You'd have whipped him. like in the Bible, like when he
Yeah,
caught
it would
those
have been the
people
money
selling.
changers. Like Jesus got the money changers out of the temple, and the Vatican has the Vatican Bank at the Vatican. Like, give me a break, dudes. It's like they have no interest in the awakening that Jesus was talking about. They want to turn it into a religion, and then they also wanted to turn it into, if you don't do this thing, then you're going to hell. And, if you don't pray to Jesus, if you don't accept him as your personal savior, blah, 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 then there will be punishment. And that has nothing to do with spirituality. Spirituality is waking up to your spirit, and realizing that your ego is a blockage, but a necessary kind of avatar thing that you need, goes along with your body for having a life on earth. And another thing I always tell people is like, you're already spirit. You don't have to be spiritual. I have videos on that on my YouTube channel. And like, you don't have to be spiritual ever in your lifetime, because you maybe chose to incarnate as somebody who doesn't focus on spirituality. Because when you're dead, you focus on spirituality the whole time. That's all there is. You're totally in it, and you're not wondering about it and debating it and whatever. You're right there. And so awakening to spirit is fun. I like it, whatever, but it's kind of a lifestyle choice, It's not really necessary, You're already spirit. And your spirit that chose to be in a body to forget who you are for a reason. And waking up might be a good thing, and yeah, it's great. But it's also, sometimes I'm jealous of the people who don't even think about that stuff. That they're just living, their little, human life on earth and taking it all seriously, and, not seeing through everything or trying to. And, there's a lot of value to that too. It's not my path, but I can appreciate it, at least intellectually. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for going over that. And I think, what it comes down to is like people, I think, they look for heroes. Like everybody looks for a hero, and everybody wants to follow somebody almost. Not everybody. That's too big of a statement, but like for the vast majority of people, especially like students, right? If you have a teacher that you absolutely adore and you love, and like Dolores, she put out some like really interesting content. Let's just put it that way. Like her books, The Convoluted Universe, even if, let's just say, for example, like if she made it all up, it's really interesting regardless. So
if she made it all up, she'd be more of a genius than she was.
Right.
I mean, that would take a lot more imagination to make it up than just
right.
to hypnotize people
and
transcribe it.
And I'm not saying that she did. I was just saying, for example, but she was really good at putting out content, and so the people, especially the people that became her students that already knew her from the books, I can really see why they would be like, oh, Dolores is like the authority. Same thing with Michael Newton. Like I remember I made, I think I just made a post about my podcast on some site somewhere, like, hey, check this out if you feel like it. I wasn't like trying to sling my podcast at that point. But I was like, hey, check this out. And someone got on there and they were like, the intro to this podcast made me laugh because we already know what happens after we die. Because in my intro, I say, what happens to us after we die? This may be the biggest question mankind has ever asked. right? But
Mm-hmm.
he's like, we already know what happens to us after we die. All you have to do is read Michael Newton's, I think it's A Journey of Souls.
Right.
And I just thought that that was just almost like arrogant. I was like, wow, I'm glad you know all the answers, because even people who are in this space, like you and me, don't even know all the answers.
Well, I can understand it because in some way I feel like, I've done around 2,000 regressions in my life, okay, since 2010. And 2,000 people didn't get together and have a meeting about how they were going to bullshit me. So these are, and a lot of these people didn't even know Dolores Cannon's work. Okay, they weren't all fans. And when 2,000 people kind of describe death and the afterlife, not identically, but just like two people that went to the same party wouldn't describe the party identically, if you asked them on Monday morning, right? They would have an overall kind of agreement that, you could tell it was the same party, but on another level, they'd have a totally different story about it. And they would be focused on different things, right? And so it's like, it's tempting to feel like, oh, I know the deal, because like I faced death a couple of times a few years ago. Once was medical, once was like in a robbery with a gun at my head. And I wasn't afraid. I mean, hardly at all, and my takeaway from that was like, oh, I really do believe it in my core, It's not like people that believe in, well, I believe when I die, I'm going to see Jesus. And then you put a gun to their head and they're crying and shitting their pants. It's like, well, if you really believe you're going to see Jesus, you're going to be like, hey, pull the trigger, dude, please. I can't wait to see Jesus, right? But most people don't believe it that much. They believe it intellectually, but they don't believe it when death is staring them in the face. But I had death right in my face. Like I knew I could be dead one split second later, twice within 6 months. And the one time when it was a medical thing, it was like I was joking with the doctors as like the machines were going off, alerting them to, my heart rate and whatever. And, it's just like when you do see, the thing is, whatever happens, sorry, my cat's like digging in the plants.
No, you're
I have a
fine.
4-month-old kitten, so I will be doing some regulating from now and again. But anyway, think of it this way. When we make it a big mystery of like nobody knows what happens after you die, we don't need to necessarily be stuck with that as a mystery forever. I think we need to keep an open mind and keep a window open, because like, for example, it's like it's like trying to explain something. Like I've gone down to the jungles of the Amazon and done ayahuasca, right? And that is so trippy. It's so psychedelic, beyond belief, right? You can never really describe to another person what it's like adequately, ever. But you can never describe what an orange tastes like to somebody who's never tasted an orange. So I'm sure no matter what, if I have 1 million clients tell me the same story about the afterlife, when it's my turn, I'm going to be like, oh man, I had no idea it's this weird, or this amazing, or like no matter what I know about it factually from my clients, I'm sure it's going to be a whole other magnitude of awesome. Um, so it's important not to think that your mind gets it fully. But on the other hand, you lift out of your body, you feel free and you feel good 95% of the time. Sometimes you meet up with somebody who tells you what's up. Other times you kind of float around, whatever. Very oftentimes you're like in this resting place for quite a while before anything else happens. And, there are certain similarities that almost everybody reports. Um, so, I don't think it needs to be a mystery forever, but it's like, it's still like you haven't eaten an orange and 1,000, 2,000 people describe the flavor of an orange. But when you eat an orange, you're going to be like, okay, I can see what you were describing, but this is way different than what I was imagining. I think it's going to end up being something like that.
Right. And I'm about it, man. Like I feel like, people like us that are kind of like in the know, I guess you'd say it. Like I've definitely seen the similarities. Someone approached me for a regression, and I did like they wanted to do the life between lives. And
Right.
so I did it, and they were describing all this stuff that, some stuff that Dolores has mentioned, some stuff that Michael Newton mentioned. She mentioned both of those, or
Yeah.
two things, and they were crossing over. So like I'm all about it. I was just like, as they say in New York, busting your chops a little bit there.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, but I mean, I think it's important to stay open and to realize on one level that we don't know, but it's also important to realize that we can find out because we are the spirits who've done this many times. You know, it's like we don't have to become more spiritual. We already are. All we have to do is kind of fire up that part of us, put attention into it. It's like the minute you focus on your hands, they're bigger. They're not really bigger, but in your consciousness, they're bigger because you're focusing on them. And like 2 minutes ago, you weren't even thinking about them. So they weren't really there, you know? And so it's like, it's good to put consciousness on different things. And you could put consciousness into your spirit. And that's what happens when you do past life regression. Like I always tell my clients, you've never had a past life. You are a life. You are not the hand. You're one of the fingers. And, the pinky never had a thumb, right? The hand has a pinky and a thumb. Okay, so all you have to do is instead of identifying as pinky, identify as hand, and then you can remember thumb. And so thumb is already there if you identify as hand. As long as you're totally identified as pinky, thumb is some, mystical idea of, oh, maybe there's a thumb, right? But like when you're the hand, it's like, duh, yeah, there's other fingers too, and so the spirit is like the hand and the lives come out of it. And so our identity is so in our incarnational personality, our ego, that it's just a matter of changing the identity to be wider. If you imagine like a V, and you're like down at the very bottom of the V, at the very point of the V, but the V goes to infinity, and you could go up it all the way, or you could go up it a little way, or you can stay down in the point, right? And so when you go a little higher, you have a perspective of more. You have a perspective of past lives and all kinds of stuff, and I'm sure that there are levels that we can't imagine, like oversoul. And then I don't know if you've ever seen Bashar, but Bashar says something like, there's like, I can't remember the number, never quote me on numbers, but something like, there's 300,000 oversouls on Earth. So everybody is a soul, but they're in one of these 300,000 oversouls. And then the oversouls have an oversoul, and on and on and on, Who knows? We don't need all that necessarily. But it's really about awakening to a higher identity. But paradoxically, when you awaken to the higher identity, you actually get more grounded in this identity as the human on earth in the body right now, because this is what your whole spiritual self decided to do. And to try to get out of it, by whatever, by meditating, by whatever, it can just be, it does, I don't mean don't meditate, I do every day, but it can be this thing where people fetishize the spirit. I did another video recently because it came into me in meditation that, and I can't remember the title, but it's basically like, you are like a hero to your soul. Your soul admires you for being a human. It's like, think of it as like somebody's the president, and, they're a really smart guy. They never got in a fist fight in their life. And they're sending Marines into battle, and they admire those Marines and feel like, hey, I could never do what they do. And they're not looking down on the Marine. They are actually in awe of that bravery. And that's the way your soul thinks about you.
These are all super, super interesting analogies and concepts, and I really love them. I love the way that you're putting these things. A question. There's no but.
Oh, no but. Oh,
there's
man.
no but. I love it. It's awesome. You have a great perspective.
Thank you.
And I'm asking, like, I don't get a chance. Some people that I've like asked hard questions to, they kind of like back off and they just like shy away from them. So
give me hard questions then.
Okay, I'll give you another hard, kind of difficult question. I actually asked this to another person, and they got kind of fired up about it. But one, like, if you look at the other side of past life regression, and by that I mean from a skeptic's point of view, what they question how ethical it is, like from a scientific point of view. What they're saying is that when you're doing past life regression with people, that it's unethical, because what you're actually doing is you're giving people delusions. You're implanting either false memories or delusions in their head, and it can screw with their head. So tell me a little bit about your perspective of that.
Well, I'm not giving them the memory. They're telling me the memory. I'm saying, okay, you're standing on the ground, look around, what do you see? And then they tell me what they see. And then I say, oh, look over that way. What's over there? And then I say, go forward into another day. And now what's going on? Very open ended. I'm not saying go to ancient Egypt and which pharaoh are you? I'm not doing that, right? I'm not being like, okay, you're Cleopatra now. And what is your latest edict from the throne? Like, no, because I have no idea where your past life is. I have no idea, about any of this stuff, right? I'm not saying I'm 100% perfect at it, because there are times where, for example, with the death process, I might say something a little bit leading. The most leading thing that I probably would ever say is like, are you out of your body yet? Okay. Assuming that you will be out of your body. Okay. So I guess you could call that leading, right? But when you do hundreds and thousands of sessions and everybody goes out of their body, I'm basically just, to me, I'm saying in a polite way, are you dead yet? But saying out of your body instead of dead, right? So I guess that's the one thing I could be accused of programming. And I don't say that every time, but sometimes it kind of drags, and you want to find out which side they're on, right? But otherwise, I'm not directing anybody to imagine anything specific. I'm asking them what they're imagining. And then I'm taking them through from there, right? It's just like I say, oh, where are you? And you're like, I'm standing in a valley. I'm like, oh, is it like lush, green, or dry? Oh, it's kind of in between. Oh, cool. So you say it's a valley. Are there mountains or, what do you see around you? Right? Yeah, there's mountains on either side and there's a river in the middle and, there's trees and blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay. Well, what's the temperature like? Is it sunny or cloudy? Is it, if you had to guess what time of day, morning or afternoon, whatever. And I'm asking questions that are pretty damn open-ended. And then they're telling me, and then I'm kind of, opening from there. So this whole idea of implanting memories, somebody would have to show me how I'm doing that. And then I'll stop. If you could show me I'm doing that, unknown to me, then I won't do it anymore. Then I'll be like, oh, I did that. I mean, I have regressions on YouTube, so people can listen to them and say, see, you implanted this memory right there. I would love for them to send me the timestamp of that, and I'll go listen to it and correct my evil ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so one of the main studies, and you can, I think you might be able to just find this on Wikipedia for anybody listening. I don't remember the doctor's name because I don't care about him, but
Right.
he ran this study that he basically was trying to prove exactly that. Like, oh, there's anachronisms. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's basically like, if you were to, like, what's a good example? Like, okay, if you were to have a life in ancient Egypt, and all of a sudden you're talking about them using chariots. As of what we know right now, they hadn't even invented the wheel in ancient Egypt. So that's what's called an anachronism.
Right.
Right? It's something in the past that wasn't there until later, like wasn't even invented until later. Like, for example, in the Book of Mormon, it says they have wheat in South America. They didn't have wheat in South America
How dare
at that
you.
time. Oh my God, I know I'm horrible. But anyway, so like one of the things that he did, and the reason that I think that he's kind of a hack is because he would set up these experiments and he would like sit there and basically he implanted these anachronisms into people's past life regression sessions, and then he'd be like, "Ha, I got you. See, you're letting me do this." It's like, of course they're letting you do. They're in a suggestible state when you're under hypnosis. That's why people can pull, like hypnotists for like the entertainment kind, can pull you up on a stage and make you think that your favorite celebrity's standing right in front of you in the audience, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, there's my favorite celebrity right there. Why is nobody else freaking out?" It's because you're very suggestible in that state.
Well, okay, but let me. I want to handle that part right away, because that whole thing of like hypnosis shows, right? The thing that you got to understand about those shows, is that there is a procedure for finding the most suggestible people in the audience. And that procedure begins when the audience is walking into the auditorium. Okay. And I don't know how it works, but I know enough that about, that the hypnotist is looking at the audience, and there are certain telltale things. And then they pull people onto the stage and they give them a little test, and they send a lot of them back that are not highly suggestible. So they end up with this core group of really suggestible people. And then they do the show with those people. And those people do have free will to not do whatever they were told to do. Like, I had a friend that it was in junior high, and the hypnotist said, "So at the end of the show, I'm going to thank everybody. And when I say thank you to the audience, you're going to stand up and say, 'Shut up.'" And so he did it. Right. But I asked him about it, and he said he knew he was going to do it. He could have not done it. Like, it wasn't like he was under some total mind control. But also he did have the inclination to do it. The hypnosis did work to make him do that. But, so he just stood up and said, "Shut up," to the guy, but that's because they really weed out everybody else. Now, when you have a hypnosis practice, you're not weeding anybody out, right? Whoever comes for a session, they come for a session. They weed themselves out. The biggest part of the work is to get them to just allow things to come through. Most of my clients' first reaction after they have a session is to doubt the whole thing, is to think I made it all up. And they're not just blindly like, "Oh yes, I was an Egyptian princess," or whatever. Like, if they were an Egyptian princess, they're like, "Yeah, I'm not too sure about that." And, I practiced this in New York for 10 years. And, New Yorkers, they're definitely skeptical people. They're not, now I'm in LA, and it's like way more like, "Oh yes, I was an angel on Jupiter," or whatever, like that's going to fly way more here, but not in Manhattan, and not as much here as people think. The thing is, we doubt our immortality, our spirit, all of that. That's the issue. The issue isn't that everybody's believing in all these crazy past lives. The issue is that people will see things that are just mind-blowing. They will have emotional reactions, whatever. And the ego still doubts it, which is healthy. It's fine. I go by the principle, you can't unsee it, and if it's true and you see it, then it doesn't matter if you doubt it later. it's going to work on you. It's like that thing from the Matrix, what he said, like the virus and, the splinter in your mind or whatever, it just keeps bothering you, and in that movie, it was like, what is the Matrix? Right. But we all have that little splinter in our mind, like what the hell is really going on? But we have this built-in doubt. And so people can have past life regression. They can have miraculous, like physical healing, emotional, deep transformation. And most people are still skeptical afterwards about the actual past life, in my experience.
Yeah, well, mine too. And,
Yeah.
so like the reason I brought that guy up is just because, like, if you're going to do a study like that, and then you're going to purposefully, like, dick around with the results, then you're a hack. Like, that's not how you do science, right? And he was out to disprove it. So anyway, I just
Yeah.
wanted to kind of get your thoughts. And that's pretty much like the standard answer I've got across the board is like, well, I'm not telling them anything. They're telling me everything. Like, I don't,
Exactly.
and for me, I don't even tell them to do anything. I'm like, okay, you're going to find yourself in a safe place,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that means to you. Okay, now you're going to find some kind of a path that's going to lead you where you need to go. Like that. It's like mine are like, even for like from what I've seen, they're open ended because I'm just like, you need to go where you need to go. Like, I don't even.
Exactly. Your higher self already knows what it wants to show you. And that's what people need to realize. Like, you're just allowing your higher self to show you something. Like, you're not going there, you're opening up to it. It's like you already remember. Some people go to their childhood and they see things, because my work is I work with creative people a lot. As soon as I became a healer, I started working with creative people, and because they came to me. And in New York, it was mainly people in the fashion business. And so it was photographers and stylists and models and like all the people, people in magazines and makeup and all that stuff. And because creative people are more, more open to inspiration, basically. They're used to actually listening to that kind of stuff. And anyway, I forgot where I was going with it. So go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's totally fine. Um, One thing I'm curious about, and the reason I'm just to give some context for the audience about why I'm going to ask you this question, is Dolores Cannon. Like, I almost want to say across, because I've read, I think 3 books. So across the 3 books that I've read from Dolores, and I've listened to a few interviews by her or to her, whatever you want to. They were interviewing Dolores, and one of the main things that she always brings up is the concept of karma. Okay.
Right.
And so when I've done past life regressions, that concept has almost, I don't think it's come up one time. It's like, oh, I have karma. I have to pay something back because I did something in my previous life that merited that I have to pay something back. And I have never in my experience even seen that. So I almost like don't even believe that karma is a thing. I just would like to get your take on that. Actually having studied with Dolores, actually having known her and practicing her method. What's your take on the concept of karma? And do you think that it's a real concept, or do you think that it's just kind of like something that was unique to like Dolores, or what's the deal with that?
Well, yeah, I'm a little bit like you. Like, karma hasn't been a huge part of what's come up in sessions. Like, So in the session, in a QHHT session, you go through one or two past lives, sometimes more if they're short. And then you connect with the higher self. Dolores was called it the subconscious, which is not like an accurate term for what we're connecting with. I prefer higher self. But anyway, sometimes when I say, for example, why did Ian choose to be that, farmer in, Bulgaria in the 1700s, right? And the higher self might say something like, oh, he had some karma with these people or blah, 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 right? So it will come up, but it's a very there does seem to be a thing. It's what it is not like, oh, you killed that guy, so now you have to go back and be killed by that guy. It's not that easy. It's not that simple. It's more like there seem to be kind of soul contracts, or there seem to be things where there is a little bit of a thing of kind of balancing the scales. And there is an idea that when you come to Earth, and this is what Dolores said, she said it in terms of the 3 waves of volunteers in the new Earth, that when you come to Earth, like a lot of the volunteers who are here to raise the frequency do not have kids because they don't want to create karma on Earth. They want to come in, have one life on Earth, and get out. And if they had a kid, they would get more entrenched and they would have to come back. So that's one big karmic thing that Dolores would talk about, is having kids. But so there is an idea of there's kind of like a whole cycle that you need to complete on Earth, and then you can leave. Then you are excused, and sometimes people just come back. Like I've had clients that went into hypnosis and they went into like 5 really short past lives. Not that the lives were short, but what they saw was short. And it was like the exact same situation they're in right now. And they get to this point, like, let's say, just to make it up, like every lifetime you're in an abusive marriage and you end up, and then you had these times where you could have gotten away or people offered to help, but you said, no, I love him, whatever. And then you end up getting murdered, and now they're like in an abusive relationship with that same person. So I've seen that happen, right? But basically the idea is that you get trapped on the Earth plane. That I have heard. And so there are, it's more the energy of like an entanglement that has to be disentangled, more than what most people think of karma, like, oh, you raped somebody in a past life, so now you got to be raped. And, oh, you owned a slave in a past life, so now you got to be a slave. Or, it's never, or almost never, that one-to-one.
Yeah, and Michael Newton, he didn't call it karma. He called it like soul contracts. So like,
yeah,
you have to learn this lesson, or you want to learn this lesson, or you felt like you lacked this in your past, in your last life. And so now you're going to make soul contracts with this person, you, and all of us are going to work together to teach you this lesson. But I'm also going to try to teach you this lesson, and blah, blah. So it gets really complicated in Michael Newton's work. Is like we're going to all teach each other these lessons.
right.
The way that I kind of personally look at it is like when I had a regression done to me, and I actually uploaded it to my show. And what ended up happening in the regression is I basically walked up to a door and stepped up to the door and then passed through it, but I left. I want to say like my ego behind, basically, almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I expanded, and I was like, I don't want to be human anymore. I'm not a human, and I hate being a human. I want to create things, but I don't have enough experience. And that's what I said. So the way I kind of look at it based off of what I've experienced is like when you come back to do all these things, you come back and you experience all these different things. The reason that you're experiencing getting murdered and then also murdering somebody, for example, is like if you're going to create something, if you want to go and create things, and you're going to create the potential for someone to murder or be murdered, you have to understand exactly what's going on both sides of that so that you can have authority to create that. Because if you're going to make something that's that consequential without knowing what you're doing or knowing what the consequences is, it's irresponsible. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know, but I mean, it kind of makes sense. Yeah, that the thing is, there are different levels of beings. So, in terms of when you're talking about creating something that would involve murder, do you mean like creating a reality where murder is an element of that reality?
Yeah,
Like,
well, it was just an example, right?
okay,
So
yeah.
I'm talking like murder or being loved or starving to death or being like really fat and happy or being really sad, whatever, all that
Well,
stuff.
the thing is, like, I always tell people, like, okay, imagine if I said, if you sign this paper, you're going to get $5 million, and tonight you're going to have a nightmare where you are tortured and murdered. And then, like, it's going to seem pretty real while the nightmare is happening. You're going to go through all this fear. You're going to be freaking out, whatever. And then you're going to wake up in the morning and be like, whoa, shit, that was intense. And then, like, 10 minutes later, you're not going to remember it and you have $5 million. Now, most people would probably take that deal, right? Because you have dreams all the time with all kinds of stuff going on that you don't remember. And if you could get paid, you probably sign up for worse dreams, right? And so think of it as like, to you, that that character in your dream that got tortured and murdered, it's not really messing you up that happened to him last night in your dream, right?
That's so messed up to think about, but like you make so much sense. It's scary.
Right. So to your soul, if that happened to you in this life, it would be like for you if it happened in a dream. So your soul isn't really freaking out on it. It's like, oh, sure, I'll sign up for the murder life. Cool. Yeah. That'll knock off like 5 future lives that I don't have to come back to Earth if I don't want to or whatever, if I just do this one really intense one, you know. So it's really messed up because, I mean, that could play into all kinds of psychopaths' ideas like, oh, it's cool if I murder them. They signed up and they're, like, yeah, it could go bad places. So, let's not start a religion with that thought. But if you understand the kind of like that Russian doll aspect, that there's like the dream for us is like the lifetime for the soul, and then and it goes up and up and up and down and down and down infinitely. So the thing is, all these questions, when it comes down to it, they all center on the idea of you or me which is like a false understanding of what we are anyway. So it's like we're trying to put everything in terms of me, right? And the thing is, well, who is this me character you're talking about, right? In terms of you living your life as Ian in Utah, that's one reality. But in terms of your soul, like that's a whole other reality. You could have many other lives happening right now that are the same soul. And, and then up and up and up. So it's like, it's more of a level, it's more of like, which level are you viewing things from? If you're at the bottom of the Grand Canyon looking at the river, it's a very different view than when you're at the top of the Grand Canyon looking down at the river. Same river, same canyon, whatever, but different perspectives. And so, I think what's happening now is that we are awakening to the higher perspective. And part of that is that we have to change our reference point. It doesn't mean we get rid of the reference point of Ian and Andy in these bodies sitting in chairs and whatever. We can totally be aware of that. But then on the other hand, when we tap into the higher levels of it, the story changes, and the meanings get a little bit more interesting. So, yeah, I don't know. What else?
No, it's just got me thinking about like we're basically, by that logic, every life would be like a dream, basically, like a short, quick, intense dream.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's like kind of depressing.
Well,
if you think about it from a me standpoint, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it's depressing to Ian, but
the thing is, if you think of it from a thing of like, if you were God, you could never worry about money.
No, you couldn't.
Right? It would be
a waste
impossible.
of time.
But you might want to have that experience. You might want to be pissed off if you can't have that experience. And so what you do is you create this human that forgot that he's God in reality, and he can worry about money. And when he dies, God's like, oh, shit, that's what it's like. Okay, I get it now. Because everything is God. And I don't really like the word God that much, but, everybody understands it, so it's easy to use. But it's like, if everything is God, then God can only know about getting murdered by forgetting he's God, being a human, being like, no, please don't kill me, please, 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 and then as soon as he's dead, he's like, oh, what the hell, I'm God. Okay, that wasn't that bad, and like, and he realizes the guy that murdered him was God too, and so he got to have the experience of being the murderer and being murdered and all that. And it's just like, it's like people that like watching horror movies. Like, I don't want to watch a horror movie. I get nothing out of a horror movie. I don't, it's jarring. I don't like it. Right. But some people like it. Why do they like it? Because it's just like God. They know they're safe. They know they're not going to get killed because they're watching a horror movie. And God knows he's not going to die because he became a human and got murdered. It's not going to mess him up at all. It's just going to give him experience and like you say, so if God is creating everything, then God might run some simulations like getting murdered and having, wars and whatever. And let's do some nukes and, whatever. Let's have an alien invasion, whatever it is. Let's have, the Earth collides with Jupiter, whatever. And because it's all just like an experience that, if you're just God sitting there oming all the time, it'd probably get dull.
God
It's like
damn it.
what was that Jim Carrey movie where he became God, and then he
Like
did
Bruce
that.
Almighty.
Yeah, and then he did that whole like I am the God, and he had the waters going and whatever, and he was just standing in this like holy moment, and then Morgan Freeman comes and like, are you okay, man? Whatever, and cuts him off right in his God moment. And so it's like, the thing is, if you imagine kind of like God, the universe, whatever, infinity is always developing. And how does it develop? It develops by splitting into different things that forget, for lack of a better word, that forget that they're part of the whole thing, so they can have individual experiences. They can believe that they're separate from all of it. And then they go back into the oneness, and the oneness remembers, right? And
Right.
and so it's like the ability to create gets more and more and more intricate and amazing every time something is created. And if you think of trillions of planets with all these different beings, and you know all these, like I had one guy in a past life that was in a spaceship just going through space all by himself for what sounded like thousands of years. It just sounded like forever. And in that life, he said he had no free will. And I said, well, why do you have no free will? And he's like, well, because if you had free will, nobody would do this. Like nobody would do this damn job, right? And so it's like, this is another thing that's interesting, because we really treasure our free will, right? It's a big part of the ego. Like we make choices and whatever, right? But what we all really aspire to, without knowing it to a certain degree, but what we all desire is to be in the zone. And if you've ever been in the zone with anything, it could be sports, creativity, it could be a conversation, it could be whatever. But when you're in the zone, there's no free will. There's no lack of free will either, kind of. It's just like, it's not even a thing in the zone. Because when you're in the zone, you just hit that baseball and it's a home run. And you didn't like figure out the trajectory and the ball's coming at me at 95 miles an hour. And if I hit it at a 35-degree angle, it'll go over, like, no. You're in the zone. You just swing and connect and home run, right? And so one thing interesting about people in alien past lives, alien planets, they generally don't have free will.
I've heard
And
that. I've heard that before.
yeah. But the thing is, they're in the zone. Like everybody is doing the perfect job that they love and that they are super talented at. And the kind of thing of like, oh, I would do this for free. If I had enough money, like I would do healing for free if I had endless money and I didn't have to worry about money,
Right.
Like I have no desire to ever retire. Like the idea of retiring, that's for people who hate their job. That's for people who are not in their right profession, or like, okay, you're like an athlete and you can't do athletics at that level anymore. And so you retire. I get it. Fine. No judgment there. But I'm saying if you really loved your job, like you notice a lot of doctors basically never retire. They're 80 years old, they're still practicing medicine, you know. Um, my dad's a doctor in his late 70s. He just retired like a year ago or 2 years ago, whatever. And he probably wouldn't have except for COVID. And so it's like when you're doing what you love, what gives you meaning and whatever, you don't need to like retire and go sit in, a retirement home in Florida. Definitely not. So most beings in the universe are in the zone. So imagine how lucky we are in a weird way to be so messed up, to be so disjointed, misaligned, that we think, like, we make fun of ideas of like Shangri-La and, that kind of thing, like utopia. I've always believed in utopia. And I think that's because I had a little soul connection where I knew, like, no, that's actually the way it's supposed to be. Like, everybody loves each other. It's beautiful. Like, that's the normal thing. And I refuse to think I'm weird for thinking that way. It should be utopia. The fact that it's not utopia should really be setting off the alarm bells. Like, hey, what the hell is this? This isn't the way it's supposed to be. And I think that's what's happening on Earth now. People are waking up to like, what the hell is this? Like, just think if every politician woke up every day thinking, how could we make everything more awesome? Now, they would have different ideas of how to do that, and they would disagree, and that's what politics would be for, and that's what debating is for, and whatever. Wouldn't it be awesome if everybody had a free TV? Yeah, wouldn't it be awesome if whatever. Free shoes for everybody. Wouldn't it be awesome if kids learned how to climb trees in PE class? Whatever. I mean, on and on. Like, if the fact that we live on a planet where people are not trying to make it awesome, where people are like, oh, well, if I screw them over and get their money, then I could buy a mansion or whatever.
You don't believe in the same Sky Daddy that I do, so I'm going to kill you.
Right. And it's like, hey, man, it's like the thing. Here's a fun thing about reincarnation and believing in reincarnation and stuff. We will never be proven wrong. Like, the people who think there's nothing, you die and that's it, if they're right, they'll never even know. They won't even have a place to stand there and say, see, I told you were delusional. Right? Okay, but if you die and then there's nothing and you're just dead, then there's no problem believing in any crap, whatever, until the moment you die, and then you're gone anyway, and it doesn't even matter what you believed in. There's no punishment, there's no reward, there's no consciousness, right? But if you believe there is something after death, and there is, then you're going to be the one sitting there like, I told you so.
And you win.
And then you win the game, and then, you get to go be an angel or something. Who knows? But, I mean, it's fun if you're talking to somebody who's like a scientific materialist, maybe not the issue for you in Utah, but I'm sure there's plenty there. People that just like, no, I think when you're dead, and that's it, and nothing else. It's like, you will never be proved right. Only I can be proven right. That's
Yeah.
really awesome.
The main
That
thing
makes
here
my
is
ego
like,
all happy.
yeah, the main thing here is like, no, this is the only life you live, and you get one little tiny blip in time to prove that you're worthy for eternity to live in the highest degree of heaven with God and Jesus and Joseph Smith. And if you don't do it right this time, then you're gonna go and you get to be with Hitler.
Right.
That's literally it
Did you ever
sounds
see
so.
Jim Jeffries? You know, the Australian comic Jim Jeffries? He has a thing about heaven and hell. Did you ever see that?
No, I haven't.
You should watch it. It's funny. But he basically says like why would Satan punish you in hell? Like you're his boy. Like he's going to treat you fine. You know, like that's God's rule. Like God's not in charge of hell. So, you know, like why would there be punishment? Like you did what Satan wanted and now you're in hell in Satan's territory. Why would he punish you? I mean, that whole theory holds no water.
You're right.
You
It
know,
doesn't. It
right?
doesn't hold water.
It
Because
would
but
just
yeah,
be cocaine and hookers, you know, like forever.
oh God.
If that's your thing, you know,
Right.
whatever. But right, I mean, Satan, it would just be a big like orgy and you know, drinking and whatever the hell sin, and you know, maybe you have fights and kill each other, and then you just pop back into existence again, and you know,
If
what?
that's your thing.
I mean, the thing is, you know, all these people that believe in this heaven hell reality, most of those people that are threatening you with hell, you would not want to live in eternity with them anyway.
It's true.
I don't want to live in a Mormon eternity if that was the
Oh
reality.
God.
Like,
Don't
you
even, you're
know,
giving me PTSD flashbacks
I
right
bet,
now.
man. Like that would suck. No coffee for eternity? F that.
No, seriously, I'm drinking like this mason jar full of coffee right now.
Yeah.
But Andy, so we've been talking for a while now, and what I usually do for people on my show is I would love for you to plug your website and your YouTube channel. So if people want to come, maybe even get a session from you, or if they want to check out your site or your YouTube videos, they can just go there. I'll include links in my description. So what do you got going on?
Great. Yeah. So my YouTube channel is just Andy Sway, ANDYSWAY. Please subscribe, comment, like, do all that stuff on there. And my website is andysway.com. So, you know, if you look up Andy Sway, there's not too many other ones. And, you know, so yeah, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and that's about it all. My email's andysway@yahoo.com. So I do a lot of different services. So for people who are in the LA area, I usually travel to my clients, or about half of the time, for hypnosis sessions or energy healing. I also do phone sessions. It can be 1 hour, just like intuitive guidance, or a 2 hour session involves energy healing and the intuitive guidance. I also do astrology sessions. And I do them either just the astrology, or we'll do a 2 hour thing where we do an astrological reading and then a distance healing. So I can do all that by phone. With all of it, it's all the work I'm doing is about opening up those emotional blockages so the energy can flow, and you know, helping people to tap into the creativity that is their essence. So that can be done by phone quite easily. That's about half of my practice, or in person in Southern California. Or, you know, if you want to splurge and fly me out somewhere. I had one guy that called me, and I could never get back in touch with him. He was in India, and he was like, I got a bunch of people that want to do hypnosis. And we figured, instead of all of us going to New York, we'll just fly you to India. And I was like, oh, damn. Yeah, let's do that, And then like, he gave me a number with like one number missing, or it was like one number too many, or it was some weird thing I could never figure out. But
you're like, damn it, I wanted to go to India. I was ready to go to
India for sure,
Right on. Well, everybody, if you feel drawn to him, if you feel connected to Andy, go ahead, check out his social medias, check out his website. Definitely head over to his YouTube channel. Check that out. There's going to be as many links as I can get in the description. And Andy, one thing I'm going to ask you and put you on the spot is, do you have a message that you would like to leave for my audience?
Oh my God. That requires brevity. Not my strong suit. The message is, you are your soul. You're already it. And if you would like to pretend for the rest of this life that you're not, that's okay.
That's a beautiful message, Andy. Well, thank you so much for coming on to my show. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I think that you had some really interesting perspectives. So thanks again for sharing your time with me.
Thank you very much. Great talking to you, man.
That's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Andy for coming on to the show. I'd also like to thank you for tuning in. You feel free to head on over to my Facebook or my Twitter. I am not sure how much I'll be posting over the next couple weeks because we're going to be having a newborn here. I'm pretty excited. So wish me luck. If you like the show, I'd appreciate you subscribing in your podcast player and sharing the show around with anyone you think might be interested, or even someone who you think would be interested in coming onto the show. If you're interested in coming onto the podcast and talking with me about your experiences, send me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and I would love to have you on the show.
But whatever, like if you won like, a couple $100 million in the lottery, you could start some shit.
See, but that's a stupid amount of money, Andy. That's a stupid, like, we live in a world of thousands, right? On our level. We live in a world. I had to explain this to my dad the other day because I told him about, like, I don't know, I said like $5 million or something like that. But we live in a world of thousands, and I was like, Dad, look, 1 million is 1,000 thousands, and 100 million is 100,000 thousands. I think that's right.
I think so. Yeah. Don't ask me to do math on the fly. It ain't gonna happen. But yeah.
Right. But it's something like that. It's a stupid amount of money. Like, if you think about the amount of money you're making at like working a 9 to 5, you're not going to touch that. Not even close. It's like unfathomable to us. So if I won like $200 million, I have like plans, man. I've planned it out just in case I ever come into a stupid amount of money. I've planned it all out.
Yeah.
Andy is a QHHT or quantum healing hypnosis technique practitioner, which is just another technique for doing essentially past life regressions. Or is it?